Have you ever wondered how we came to know what we know about the brain? Hi, I'm Jason, and my partners Ethan, Liana, and Teresa and I are going to present a book by Sam Kean. Before we give you the title, however, see if you can figure out this word puzzle. Time's up! If you said The Tales of the Dueling Neurosurgeons, you'd be right, and this is also the title of our book. Sam Kean put a puzzle like this one at the beginning of each chapter, and how appropriate too, as this book explores the puzzling nature of our brains, sharing anecdotes of how certain discoveries in neuroscience came to be. As stated on the cover, it is the history of the human brain as revealed by true stories of trauma, madness, and recovery.
One key message that we took home from the book was that throughout history, the tragedy of brain damage has led to discovery and learning. Our understanding of neuroscience is learned by failure and tends to be messy. The learning of the brain was very unstructured, and often there were two opposing views, with neither one being completely correct or incorrect. One specific anecdote that demonstrates this accidental discovery follows King Henry II of France. In 1559, Henry participated in a jousting tournament against a man named Gabriel Montgomery. During their second round, Montgomery's jousting pole struck the king between his eyebrows and raked across his face, wrenching his skull sideways and digging into his right eye. Two distinguished neurosurgeons of the time, Ambroise Paré and Andreas Vesalius, joined together to help Henry, who was suffering from temporary paralysis, seizures, and confusion. Paré was the royal surgeon and was known for refusing to stick to useless medical norms at the time, rather relying on his own experiments. Vesalius was known for his autopsies and his famous book, On the Fabric of the Human Body. After Henry's inevitable death, Paré and Vesalius performed an autopsy, where they found pools of blackened fluid and yellowed tissue in the brain, signs of clear damage. The scientists proved for the first time that trauma to the brain could be deadly without a skull fracture. They also performed the first ever autopsy on a king, which later became standard care for royals. This tragic story of Henry's death demonstrates the idea that since the beginning, we have learned about the brain from failure. It also shows that, through Paré and Vesalius, that although opposing views are often present, they joined together to further our understanding of neuroscience.
Another one of Kean's main messages from his book was the fact that nothing in the brain is strictly localized. He explains that the brain has general localization of function, like the occipital lobe housing the primary visual cortex, but Kean emphasizes that assigning a specific function to only one part of the brain is a major oversimplification. Locals only, but not really. The brain is ingeniously arranged, with each part contributing to the whole, and it cannot be studied in isolation.
A specific anecdote that illustrates this complex, not strictly localized understanding of the brain is the two streams theory, in which data from the primary visual cortex is divided into two streams for additional processing, the how-where stream and the what stream. The how-where stream circulates the data into the occipital lobes and the parietal lobes until it reaches the primary motor cortex. The what stream circulates data into the temporal lobes, which is important for memory and recognition. As neurons fire at the beginning of each stream, they fire for any shape and color, for example, horizontal lines or blobs of red. As neurons fire toward the end of the circuit in the temporal lobes, they discriminate the visual field more critically, only for lines that are red, horizontal, and metal. At the same time, other neurons fire to distinguish other shapes and color, the clear glass and black rubber circles, until the brain identifies the pattern. Ah, a red Corvette. These two streams need to happen in conjunction for recognition to occur. Danger to the flow of either stream alters the way we register the world. A Swiss woman had a stroke in 1978 that damaged her parietal lobe. Her sense of visual motion was lost because of the damage to her how-where stream. Her life became a series of Polaroid snapshots every 5 seconds. She could not talk with groups of people for long periods of time because the appearance and reappearance of them induced nausea. This tragic story shows how simply recognizing objects requires processing in parts of the brain way beyond the visual cortex. The brain does not strictly use specialized circuits for certain tasks, which demonstrates how the brain is not strictly localized.
How might the book influence our behavior? Learning about different mental illnesses and brain conditions gives us a different perspective on certain psychological conditions. While our behaviors may not actively change, we all take away a newfound awareness of how the brain works and how certain conditions can cause people to act irrationally. Stories that once seemed far-fetched relating to a person going mad now seem believable, with biological evidence backing them up. The book nurtures a newfound interest in the many conditions in the brain, and we like to explore the various anomalies that can arise. Furthermore, the book shows the importance of seeing science not as monotonous research, but rather as an exciting, evolving narrative. One large novel, if you will. From a king's tragic joust, to a blind traveler's efforts to echolocate, to a metal rod through Phineas Gage's head, each innovation has its own unique backstory and makes up its own chapter in this story of science. We all came away with a newfound appreciation of scientific history and aim to pursue science, not just with facts in a textbook, but also through the background that brought researchers to their discoveries. Finally, we found a new appreciation for our brains. Keene ends the book reminding us that, although we may be fragile, we are also very strong and resilient. The brain is capable of so many amazing things, as shown through the various stories. And at the end of the day, the book reminds us of our potential.
We believe that this book should be read by any person with the faintest curiosity in neuroscience. The holistic nature of the book, touching on many aspects of the brain, because remember, the brain cannot be studied in isolation, makes it a great introductory read. This book is especially helpful for intro psychology students, because it complements the class by containing real-life examples of class material. Placed in story form, which Keene says is how humans learn best, the content is engaging and memorable. The book can be well understood by people both with and without a scientific background. Keene does not overload readers with details, but does include helpful diagrams of anatomical structures to explain the more specific scientific content. Furthermore, I think family members of people who suffer from brain damage should read this book to help them better understand their loved ones. Over Thanksgiving break, I, Ethan, had the chance to visit my grandpa, whom I call Beep. Beep has partial anterograde amnesia after 2 strokes, but is very joyful and quite the humorist. After reading this book and learning about memory, I was able to better understand his condition and appreciate his disabilities. As a loving grandson, I continued to laugh at his repeated jokes. You know, the ones that he forgot he already told you many times. Reading stories about other humans with brain damage and understanding the psychological and physiological changes of the brain may help family members like me better demonstrate love to the people they care about. In all, with its entertaining stories and comprehensive information, this book is an enjoyable guide into the complexity of the brain and human nature.